Are you seeing fuzzy white hairs on your microgreens? Don't worry. Today I'm going to teach you how to tell, is that root hair or is that mold? And if it is mold, we're going to dive deep into mold preventing things so you don't have to worry. In fact, we'll even stop mold before it has a chance to strike, starting at the very beginning so that you're able to keep your microgreens fresh and healthy. Hi, I'm Connor Hebel, and we empower people just like you to grow even better health in just 7 days through microgreens. So let's get on with the video. And in fact, I have a secret tip coming up in just a moment. It is my go-to method for mold prevention and has saved me dozens of trays of microgreens without any harsh chemicals. So stick around to see that one. All right, before we go into mold prevention, let's talk about the difference between root hairs and mold. There is a big difference. Root hairs are normal. They're a part of your plant, they're a part of your microgreens, and you want them. Mold, on the other hand, you do not want that. It's not good for you and it's gonna mess up your crop. So there's a couple ways we can tell. First, we can just examine the microgreens. Is a spot that has the root hair or mold looking white and kind of more straight? That's gonna be more your root hairs. If it's more gray with like little black specks and it's spiderwebby, that's mold, and that is a challenge. The easiest way to tell is take a spray bottle and mist once and see, does it disappear or does it stay? If it disappears, that's root hair. If it stays, then it is mold. You don't want to mist too much in this because if it's mold, you don't want to be adding too much water and adding more of a humid space. So just 1 or 2 sprays with your spray bottle and you'll be able to tell almost immediately if it is mold or if it's root hair. So this is really important, and I'll show you an image right here so you can get an idea of the difference between the two. They look very similar, and yet they're not. All right, so common causes for mold. The biggest one is overwatering. If you water your microgreens too much, they're gonna get mold. Mold likes damp, humid spaces, and because you're growing microgreens so densely, there isn't as much ventilation, and so mold likes that. So that's one of the reasons why later on in the video, which I'm gonna kind of spoil here, is you change your temperature to be a bit cooler because mold doesn't like cool. So you keep it cooler and then you won't have to worry as much about mold. That is optional. If you do not do well with cold, you do not have to do this. It just does help reduce that risk. Another one, speaking of air, is poor airflow. If your microgreens aren't getting enough airflow, that can cause mold. Some people like putting a fan right next to their microgreens to get that ventilation going. And I've heard 2 camps, one that says it's super important and another one that says it's not as necessary. So do your own experiment. See, does your microgreen grow better with a fan or without one? That's the fun thing about microgreens. There's so much fun experimenting you can do with it. So you want to make sure that every time you use scissors, you use your microgreen trays, you go ahead and wash them because you don't want any contaminants from those trays and from those tools. And it's as simple as putting it through the dishwasher. You can use food grade hydrogen peroxide, which if you're interested in learning how to do food grade hydrogen peroxide, go leave me a comment and let me know that that's of interest to you so that I can tailor a video specific to your questions or anything you have in terms of food grade hydrogen peroxide. And you really want to make sure that you're washing your trays because you never know what's on there. And especially if you've grown microgreens already, there could be potential mold spores or anything like that from your last grow. Our goal is to keep this as completely sterile as we possibly can. So be sure to wash your trays. So as we talked about, mold likes a cool, dark space. So after day 3, make sure that you're putting your microgreens near the sun where it's getting light because mold loves the dark. So keep it near a window and you're gonna have a significantly less likelihood of mold. Another really cool thing about this, if you're finding that you're getting mold, you can leave your microgreens supervised outside for about 15 to 20 minutes, and the natural sunlight will really help reduce that risk of mold. Make sure you are watching your microgreens as they are out there because sometimes the sun can fry them. So be sure they are supervised. And that's one of my favorite ways to reduce that risk of mold, supervise my microgreens. So another couple things that are really good, like I mentioned, food grade hydrogen peroxide is really important. Another big one, your seed quality. You want to make sure that your seeds are pathogen tested. Remember about 6-7 years ago, the E. coli and salmonella scares with sprouting? That was because they had been using seeds that weren't tested for pathogens. So they were sprouting E. coli and salmonella in their sprouting jars. So this is really important. You want to make sure that the seed company that you're going with has tested for those pathogens. As well, when they test for pathogens, they typically test the germination rate. And what a germination rate is how many of these seeds have sprouted, how many of them will grow. So having a really high germination rate means your microgreens are going to be growing even better and have a significant less likelihood of mold. Because if your microgreens don't germinate, then sometimes those ungerminated seeds will mold. So it's best to get higher quality seeds. That's why sometimes when people are like, well, I could go to the dollar store and get microgreens, I'm like, yeah, but the seed quality is probably not that great. And I wouldn't risk it since you're eating that close to the seed. When they're grown in their full mature stage, it's not as urgent, but because you're eating so young, it makes a huge impact. And so that seed quality is really huge and will affect your mold. Like I mentioned, 65 to 75 degrees is really great temperature for reducing that risk of mold. And be sure to have food-grade hydrogen peroxide on hand if you're finding that these couple tips haven't been able to help you move forward and reduce that risk of mold, because it will get rid of that mold. It's just not something you commonly have on hand, and yet it makes a big difference. And the brighter your indirect sunlight is that your microgreens are getting, the less likelihood of mold, because they'll be getting more sunlight, which mold doesn't like. So a little tip here, when you're watering your microgreens with coco coir, look at the dry coco coir puck that you started with. See how it's a light brown? And now notice if your microgreens are the same color brown as that coco coir puck. If it's the same color, then it's really dry. If it's not light brown and it's more of a darker color, then that's a good sign, because it's not going to dry out. However, you want to make sure that your soil is not a mud pie either. So this is a way that I like to get an idea, are my microgreens needing more or less water? Have you ever had a mold scare when growing your microgreens? Drop a shocked emoji in the comments below. Know that you're not alone. If you're ready to go from microgreen beginner to microgreen grower, check out AmeliaIslandMicrogreens.com/101 for a free 10-part microgreen class where I show you everything that I've learned in my 14 years of microgreen growing experience. This series has everything you need to start growing easily and effortlessly right at home in just 7 days. So now that you know how to find mold, the precautions you want to take, now let's talk about how to treat it once it's there. As I mentioned, food-grade hydrogen peroxide is going to be one of the quickest ways to reduce that mold immediately. And I know that it's not always on hand, so let's go through some of the other ways that you can. The first thing you want to do, you want to isolate this tray immediately. Get it away from any other microgreens or any other plants you have. You can take it outside, whatever you need to do. Just make sure that it's not near your seeds or soil, because mold spores can cross over to other plants and other microgreens. So this is really important. And this is especially important if you have multiple microgreens growing, whether for yourself or for a microgreen business. Make sure that you stop this spread. It is brutal if you don't. So now, once you've moved it, let's assess the mold damage. Assess, is it a large spot or is it just a tiny little patch that you can just kind of pick off? Which, if you have smaller spots, you can just pick them off. Pick off as much mold as you can. But if it's already up to the top of the microgreens and it's just everywhere, you're gonna wanna discard it. Go ahead and throw it in your compost, throw it away. I wouldn't recommend giving it to chickens, which for other microgreens that are fresh, you can harvest the top, give the chickens the soil and the roots, and they love that. But for moldy microgreens, just discard it. So if it's just a small patch, like I mentioned, pick some of it off, use the hydrogen peroxide, use a couple of the other tools and the special tip that I have at the end of this video, and that'll reduce that mold quite a bit. And especially sometimes it's just a little bit of mold that you can pick off, and then you have less likelihood of continuing the spread, as long as you've started as soon as that mold has started spreading. After it gets bigger, you're gonna wanna either really use hydrogen peroxide or just discard it. And it's okay to discard microgreens. We all have that one microgreen that just does not grow. And I've been growing microgreens for 14 years and there's still times where I'll be growing my microgreens and one day it'll mold, and that's normal. Don't feel like it's you or you did something wrong or this or that. Some people have a setup where it's just like it all grows, and sometimes it doesn't. I find that with microgreens, it's really easy to grow and the likelihood of mold is pretty low, but it is still something that is a concern, and I know that people go through it. I've gone through it quite a bit because of how much I've grown. I've had a lot of experiences, and so I get to know all the great stuff and have a couple challenges. And just remember, don't let the first grow stop you from continuing on. Experiment. There's gonna be something that makes your microgreens work out even better. And isn't it cool if your microgreens that had a challenge teach you how to be resilient and allow you to know what to do if something goes wrong with your microgreens in the future? So see it as an opportunity to learn and grow, because you either win or you learn. And when you're a winner, you get microgreens. So since it's a small patch, just treat and monitor it closely, just making sure it's not spreading. If it starts to spread, I would recommend just discarding it. With mold, you really don't want to risk eating it and taking it. It's better just to throw it away. And if it's small, then you can see if you can salvage it. Just be cautious with that. So if you're feeling more confident about growing your microgreens, smash that like button and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss more amazing microgreen videos. So now that you know how to beat mold, you might be wondering, what is the best variety of microgreens to start with for mold-free success? I'll show you in a moment. Are you ready to dive deeper? Go into my microgreen masterclass at ameliaislandmicrogreens.com/101 for a free microgreen masterclass. You won't want to miss it. It's packed with all sorts of awesome stuff. All right, now for that secret tip. One of my favorite things to use to reduce mold during the planting process is cinnamon. I get a little sprinkle of cinnamon and I add it to my soil, into my growing medium. And what this does is it really reduces your risk of mold while you're growing your microgreens. I was growing one tray with cinnamon and the other one without, and what I found was that this tray did not have any mold while this one did. And I was using old seeds just to see, will it grow, will it not grow? And it was amazing how cinnamon made all the difference. So I highly recommend sprinkling in some cinnamon into your microgreen grow trays as you're growing your microgreens. And say you forget to add it during germination, go ahead and add it next to if you have any mold. It won't hurt your plant, and you never know if it'll make a difference. Plus it just smells good. It smells like you've just been baking, and it smells so nice. It covers up that earthy cocoa coir smell. So it's a really fun way to reduce that risk of mold, and probably my favorite way that I've found. And it's very inexpensive. Everyone has cinnamon in their pantry, so not hard to do. Much easier than food grade hydrogen peroxide. And so are you ready to pick out the easy microgreens to grow? Click on the video on your screen right now and let's dive into microgreens that are easy to grow right at home. Stay awesome and see you there.